good morning. Welcome back to Adding and Subtracting Fractions with Mr. Harris. I am delighted to see you all. I've just been trying to sort out the room temperature because it's getting a bit hot under my lights that I've got, and I had the window open to try and make it so it was a bit cooler. Unfortunately, someone decided to mow the lawn this morning, so that's interesting. I don't know what they were doing, but when they were getting to the edges, they were making sort of sound like Jaws. It was like doo-doo. And then I didn't hear it for I thought either they're mowing the lawn or I'm about to be attacked by a shark, which on a first floor window, that's quite worrying. Okay, so I'm assuming we're here and we're probably in one of two camps. We're probably someone who really likes fractions, in which case, this should be fun, or we really don't like fractions and we're here to try and make sure they improve that. And that's fine. You're allowed to not like things. You're allowed to hate things. It's absolutely fine. But my job is to try and make it so that it's more interesting, more useful, and hopefully you will leave this video knowing a bit more about fractions than you know at the moment. So let's get it going. Let's see what I can do with it. I'm just going to adjust that ever so slightly. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move over to this screen here. And on this screen, I'm going to be able to work through today because the nature of fractions is that it's quite written and we're going to need to do something. I recommend you making notes. Now, the other thing you need to do is flag in the chat if at any point you can't see what I'm writing because I've gone behind my picture. Now, one thing to be aware of, I don't know if you've been told this before, I found out that the ships that they use in Norway and Denmark have barcodes on the sides. Apparently they do this so that when the ships come back to harbour, they can Scandinavian. Mr. Harris, you really need to have words with yourself and not tell such terrible jokes. So, I'm going to flick back to here for a second so you can see me and I can talk about what fractions are. Fractions are not to be confused by being a number over a number, because the bottom of a fraction, the number on the bottom that we call the denominator, just tells you its size. It doesn't tell you anything else other than how big it is. And it's weird in that the bigger the number, the smaller the slice. If I've got tenths, they are quite small. If I've got halves, they're quite big. Which means the smaller the number on the bottom, the bigger the size. But that number, that's all it does. And to help us today, that's what I would like you to remember. We're going to try, where possible, to use the names rather than the numbers. Because hopefully that will make a lot of sense when it comes to adding and taking away fractions. Remember, if at any point you're getting confused, you can pause the video, go back a little bit, or you can write messages either into the comments or the live chat where people might be able to answer for you and help you out, or post a comment underneath and I will try to reply to any comments to the video that people post from now until forever. As long as it's not a million comments, in which case I might struggle. Let's go and have a look at this first thing I'm going to talk about. Right. So, with a fraction such as 2/7, I've already mentioned to you that the bottom number is just the size. So I'm going to refer to this as 2/7. And the reason I do this is because if we're going to add 3/7, but we're going to call that 3/7, if we do it by talking about it, rather than by looking at numbers and getting scared and intimidated by them, if I said 2 tomatoes and 3 tomatoes, all of you, even year 3s and 2s, would be okay with 2 tomatoes and 3 tomatoes makes 5 tomatoes. So when we add them together and we think of them as words, it must be 5/7. 2/7, because the seventh is just how big it is, the slice is. 3/7 is how big the slice is, so we're going to keep it as sevenths. So the answer must be 5/7. Not 14, because the bottom is not a number, it is how big the slices are. So we don't change the sizes of the slices based just on the fact that we're going to add them. So we've got 2 slices, add 3 slices, makes 5 slices. Now in general what that means is, as long as these bottom numbers are the same, we can add the top numbers together. Let me show you another example using takeaway for this one. If I've got 5 ninths, take away 4 ninths, let's think a bit in words. I've got 5 ninths and I've got 4 ninths. If I had 5 tomatoes and I took away 4 tomatoes, I don't know why I'm obsessed with tomatoes. I should probably get some different fruit into my explanations. 5 take away 4 ninths must give us 1 ninth left over. Because 5 take away 4 is 1. Remember, if you're stuck, look at the words. Which is all fantastic. Sometimes we'll even get groups. We might get 3 whole cakes and a fifth. And I have to add 2 whole cakes and 2 fifths. Well, I'm not going to be scared here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take my whole cakes, and they're already ready at the table. So I'm going to take those both over together, and I've got 3 and 2. I've got 5 whole cakes here. Then I'm going to take my 1/5 and 2/5 and take those over into the kitchen and put them on a plate together. So I've got 1/5, add 2/5. And remember, you don't have to write it out, but I think it helps remember the bottom is just the size of the slice of cake. I'm talking a lot about cake as well as tomatoes. Perhaps I should focus more on the tomatoes because they're a bit healthier. 1/5, add 2/5 makes 3/5. So that's 3/5. Then we bring everything together. So we've got our 5 from over here, and we've got our 3/5 from over here. So they are going to come together to give me the answer 5 and 3/5. Well, that didn't seem too bad. I'm looking in the chat. There's a few people doing saying different things. Unfortunately, I do apologise that some people are a little bit more immature, so we will have to remove those people. Thank you very much for those people who are being very sensible. So we've got 5 and 3/5. We are going to just now look at what happens if I've got one where the answer is slightly different. What if I've got 4/7 and I add 5/7? Once again, let's focus on the bottom being the same. So when we add them together, we get still 4/7 and 5/7 gives us 9/7. And so we get, we've got 9/7. It's too big. So therefore, the first thing we need to do is get rid of some of those 7s. So the way I do it is I think about the 7 times table, and I look at that and go, well, where can 9 get me? Well, 9 does get me past 1, but it's in there somewhere. So this must be 1 whole one, and then there's 2 left over. 7ths are just the size. Hopefully that's really helpful. Now there's one worksheet. For those of you who are in year 4 or 5, maybe year 6, you may decide that that's enough for now. You want to take those things, maybe watch the rest of the video, but you might decide you want to take that and do the first worksheet. Because there's 2 worksheets in the description below. One where they're all the same, but the second one when they're different. What are we going to do when they're different? Well, to help you with when they're different, I'm going to tell you a story. Once upon a time, there were 2 fractions, and they came from different families. And the problem is these families did not get on. They were arch enemies. It wasn't at all like Romeo and Juliet. These two families, they didn't speak to each other, they fought, they had rows. It was a long, long history of drama. And so, they were forbidden to speak to each other. And so one fraction, the boy fraction, went into a garden one day and he came upon the other fraction with from the different family. They were two very different fractions. One was 1/3 and one was 1/5. One was from the third family and one was from the fifth family. They said, we're not supposed to talk to each other. And they started talking to each other and they got quite friendly. And you know what happened? The more they spent time with each other, the more they started to like each other. And they kind of started to fall for each other. Until one day, they were in the garden together and they knew they weren't supposed to mix. And they were talking to each other. And the fractions, when they were speaking to each other, they said, well, the only way we're ever going to be able to be combined is if our families join together. So they went home and they spoke to their families, and the families put aside their differences and they said, okay, we will join together so that you two can be together. So, why have I told you that silly story? Well, the reason for the silly story is because we have two fractions. We have 1/5 and the 1/7, and they wanted to be combined, but they couldn't because they're different sizes. They're from different families. So they said the only way we can be together is if we combine our families. If you combine the families, that's going to become 35, and that's going to become 35. But in order to do so, what I always do is I write, what have we times by to make the families combined? And we must do the same at the top. So the top has become 7/35, and the top has become 5/35. These are now the families combined. They're in the 35 family. The 7th family can't be added to the 5th family. They're different families. They're rowing. So they healed their wounds and made one big family of 35. And then when they added them together, well, the 35ths, just like our normal rule, they had 7/35, and they had 5/35. So they added them together to get 12/35. Remember, that is adding fractions when they've got different denominators. Okay, now hopefully you appreciate that there is no numbers on the left hand side of the board. I've deliberately, oh there is, I need to move this over. Thank you very much for whoever just pointed that out to me. I need to collect this all together, so let's quickly sort that out. Thank you for those people who pointed out that I'm in the way. I can move this over this way, and I need to move that bit over. Hopefully you can now all see my 7/5. Unfortunately, this is what happens. I think either I've got a really big head, which is probably that one, or I need to make my head my screen a little bit smaller so you can see more of the writing and less of me. Hopefully this makes some sense, adding the 5/35 and the 7/35 together. We can do the same with takeaway. You still can't combine them when they're from different families. So when we've got 8/11ths and we try and take away a half, we can't, because 11ths and the 2s, they're different families. And the only way you're going to be allowed to combine them is if you've got them in a combination of families. So the first step I'm going to do is combine the two families, 22 and 22. So I'm going to times that one by 11 and that one by 2, which means I'm also going to do that one by 11 and that one by 2, giving me 16/22 and 11/22, allowing me now to subtract. So we can therefore go through and subtract because we have 16 22ths. I don't know even how, I'm going to call it 22ths. I don't think that's the correct way of saying it, but I think you all understand what I mean. They're 22ths, and that's 16 22ths must be, it's how many teeth that 16 people have, maybe 22ths. Okay, well, we take them away and we have 5 22ths left. Remember, saying it out loud because the bottom is just the size. That's all it is. So it's 5 over 22. Now the last bit I'm going to do, because I don't want to make this too long a video, because obviously it's a bit different, is what we do when these are mixed fractions. Now that means I'm going to want to use purple for my mixed fractions. I love a bit of purple. So we've got, what about if it's 3 and 3/7? Remember, you can use the chat. There are people in the chat who are more than happy to be sensible and help each other out with the answers. Okay. And then we add 2 and 1/4. Well, the 2 and the 3 are fine. We're going to go over here with the 2 and the 3. 2 add 3 is 5. I'm happy with that. But it's the 3/7 plus 1/4 that is less easy, because they're from different families. They're not allowed to be added. So we're going to make that the 28 family, and that the 28 family. They're going to combine them by timesing by 7. Remember, whatever I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So I'm going to go with 12 and 7, giving me 19 28ths, because the bottom is just the size, it's the top we care about. So I must have the answer, if it's not in my head, this could be in my head, this one, 5 and 19 28ths will be my overall answer to this question. I've separated it out. Now you may have seen, if you're looking at the second sheets that are in the description below, there's one more bit which is some little bits of brickwork. Now if we're going to do brickwork, it makes sense to use red. I'm sure some of you are sick of the sight of brickwork so far. When you're doing brick questions that look like this, what it is basically is it's several questions in one question. If I've got 2 9ths and 3 9ths and 4 9ths, then the one above it is going to be that one, add that one. So it's going to make 2 9ths and 3 more 9ths, giving us 5 9ths. 3 9ths plus 4 9ths gives me 3 and 4 is 7 9ths. And then to go up one more, we're going to add that one and that one, giving me 12 9ths. But we don't want 12 9ths, so we're going to do our normal thing. We can take one of the 9ths away and give 3 9ths. But even better, look, this, they both are in the 3 times table. So let's make it 1/3. We've got the answer 1 and 1/3. That's how you do the brickwork questions that are on the worksheet. Hopefully this has been helpful to you today. I have tried to make it interesting but also informative. I'd love to make it all just a giggle and me messing around, and I like to try and make you have a smile and try and make you have a laugh. But equally, it's important that we try and learn these skills, and the best way to do that is to now go away and practice. Choose one of the levels. If you're in the early years, year 4, 5, 6, maybe you'll just want to do the first worksheet. Or do the second one. You don't need to do both, because the second one is where the denominators are different. Remember, we can't add and take away while the denominators are different. I will insert now, though, that you can multiply and divide with different ones. And next week, at some point, we're going to look at multiplying and dividing fractions. So what questions do you have? Well, I'm going to leave this running and looking at the live chat. If you have any questions, I'll try and respond to them there. What I'd like you to do is let me know if there's anything that I can help with, anything that's useful, and either in the live chat, or even better, if you're coming to this video and it's already finished, it's already not live, post them in the comments below. The whole point of me running Mr. Harris School of Maths is that I can help you be a school away from school. It's not a great time for any of us. We obviously want to be in school, whether it's to see our friends or to improve our maths learning. If I can help you, I will do my best. Thank you so much. Off you go.